So today I'm going to talk about individuation, specifically how individuation is the medicine to heal from unhealthy empathy, or in other words, from being lost in your environment, from being identified with sensation, but being diffused and losing yourself in the environment, losing yourself in the opinions of others, in your family dynamic, in the world stage, in the planetary energy. Individuation is the answer of how we heal from having no sense of self, right? It makes perfect sense. So I had a Kundalini awakening it started in 2012, but I had the cracking of the cosmic egg and the descent of grace and the rise of Kundalini that's been happening for 9 years. And everything I share on this channel is insights that I have realized from my journey of my own life. So they are my insights. I didn't learn this anywhere. And so for that reason, take it or leave it, right? I'm not teaching you a system. I'm not teaching you a philosophy. I am not a conventionally trained healthcare professional. I am finishing my PhD in spiritual psychology, and I'm an attorney. I don't practice law anymore, but that's my formal education. So the empath must individuate. I have a friend here in Miami who has been working with narcissists and the people that have been affected by the narcissist, whether it's the wife, the husband. And she's from Argentina, and she uses a word in Spanish called narcisar, which is there's not a word in English called to narcissate. But she tells her clients with unhealthy empathy that what they must do is narcisar, right? And to disconnect from whatever situations they're in, whether it's an unhealthy relationship, an unhealthy family environment, to essentially, kind of like the magician in the tarot, go into the forest and discover your own power. Discover your own power. Discover that your real source is not coming from your connection with your environment. It comes from within you, and it's self-evident. So, unhealthy empathy can be really difficult. Like I said, you can literally not know the difference between your body and another person's body. And if you pause and sincerely ask, Source, God, Creator, why is this happening to me? Why is it so hard for me to tell the difference between me and another person? You'll get the answer. Oh, you decided to calibrate to your environment, maybe on a soul level so that you could deeply understand people's pain. Okay, but you can choose to do it another way. You don't have to feel it directly in your body. Maybe also on a karmic level because, it helps you to control the environment so that you don't feel as unsafe as you chronically feel. You'll start to get the answer. All you have to do is really, really sincerely ask. And it's really important, by the way, when you're narcissisating and individuating, to make your primary therapist God. In other words, talk to God, talk to yourself, ask sincere questions with conviction, get the answers for yourself. So when you're healing from unhealthy empathy, ask why you're experiencing something so extremely. You'll get the answer, and you'll often experience it will clear up rather quickly. A huge aspect of our psyche and of our actions that makes it difficult for us to tell the difference between what we want and what another person wants. In other words, we get sucked into the desire streams of other people. And what does that look like? You might meet someone who you feel is really off to you, because even when the empath meets the narcissist, it's happened to me twice. I knew it. I just knew it, and I ignored it, and I went along with it. I acquiesced. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't even want to be here. Why am I here? I don't even want to be in this situation. Why am I in this situation? It's because that tendency to acquiesce is so deeply ingrained. We have to understand that. We have to stop acquiescing. If you feel that something is not right for you, right? So many things can come up when you start to say no. saying no can be so hard for a person that it can literally feel like you're in sleep paralysis, because that's your karma. You don't have boundaries. You don't speak up for yourself. So when you start to like try to do it, like it sometimes feels like it's like frozen deep inside of you. Like it's almost hard to say it out loud. And then all the other things come in, like feeling guilty. Oh, but if I say no, I'll hurt their feelings. And honestly, if I hurt their feelings, I'm going to have to feel their hurt feelings, because I'm an unhealthy empath. Because if their feelings are hurt, on top of my guilt, I'm going to feel their hurt feelings. And so it's like a big spiral of like trying to control the uncontrollable, when the answer would be to just say no. When you say no to something, people argue about, do we have free will? Do we not have free will? For the purpose of this conversation, let's say that we do have free will in the relative world, where we can say no when we want to say no. I think psychologically, to tell yourself that we have no free will, it can actually hurt you, and it can not force you to, but it can lead you and enable you to acquiesce into these unhealthy patterns, when the truth is actually you can make a decision. You can say no, you're just not doing it. So it's really important not to acquiesce, to say when you're uncomfortable, to create a boundary. If you create a boundary with someone, it goes without saying, if they belong in your life, they'll stay. Right? We're so afraid of abandonment, and that makes sense, because if your whole life, all you've ever known is connection to my environment, connection to my family, connection to the world energy, connection, disconnecting is going to be the most foreign thing in the world to you. So to avoid the uncertainty and fear that comes up in the act of disconnection, you hold on to things that you don't want. And you have to stop doing that. That's why it's so scary, because all you've ever known is being blended with your environment. All you've ever known is being part of something, right? So it triggers this wound of abandonment. And so to heal that, you have to say like, well, I honor that fear, and I honor that pain, and I have compassion for how intensely people avoid that pain, because I avoided it. I mean, I felt like I was treading water in my life for years, just like a chicken with my head cut off, just trying to not feel that, just trying to not feel alone in this world. But, they say the pain is where the light comes in. The most profound healing and returning of my physical vitality that I've ever experienced. By the way, I've said this in many videos. I've had cancer, I've had bulimia, Hashimoto's, and hypothyroidism. All of those diseases were caused by cold energy, by frozen energy. So to thaw out, you must narcissate. To thaw out, you must figure out what your desires are. The path of a narcissist's healing is to become more empathetic. That's why they attract emotional people. But someone who's lost in their environment, their pathway is almost the opposite. They have to go for what they want. Because if your tendency is to get lost in your environment, to successfully individuate, what you must do is say, what do I want in this life? If I disconnect from my family's drama, and I disconnect from worrying about what people think about me, and what people are doing and feeling, and trying to understand everything in my environment, and if I just let that go, and I just ask myself, who am I and what do I want? That might lead you on a journey that separates you from a lot of people. I've traveled alone a lot in my life. When Kundalini awoke for me, what it guided me to do was to honor myself. What it might guide a narcissist to do is to honor others more. I would only honor others to the extent that I put myself in dangerous situations for the sake of trying to be a comfort or in some cases a guide or a teacher or a mother to people in my life. And what happens is when you're awakening and you try to stay in a situation that you've clearly outgrown, it's like trying to stay in a burning house. You've outgrown a relationship or a job or something, and you know it, but you're scared of disconnecting. So you try to stay. And then what happens is it feels like you're standing in a burning house. The house is on fire because God is trying to get you out of that house. And you have to have the courage to be the magician and go into the forest and find your own power. Even if that means you're going to be alone. You know, in my life, I've had to deal with my fears about being my age. And I have been dreaming since I was 13 years old of being a mother. My job as a teenager was always babysitting. I have a 7-month-old nephew that I am with him every chance I get. I live to nurture. I live to... that's just a part of me. My moon is in Cancer in the 4th house. It's such a big part of me. And to me, like, not having children has been super painful for me. But I'm so thankful for the reward that instead of valuing myself by having a family or having this or that, I just value myself because I'm me. Not because I'm married or have this or that. Like, and I'm really looking forward to all of that too still, but like, I honestly just am okay with myself and the way my life has turned out. I honestly am, and that's so rewarding. And, you know, people in the non-duality space are like, there is no self. Okay, well, if there is no self, why is your personality attracting you experiences? You know, Kundalini is aligning your personality with divinity. There is a self, there is an essence, there is an individual. But what we're deconditioning from is the fictitious individual, the one that censors itself, performs, needs to be something, needs to get somewhere. Blah, 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 blah. No, we don't need to get anywhere. Right now, your worth is self-evident. Your radiance is self-evident. And sometimes in order to really feel that, like if you're on the path of healing from unhealthy empathy, you have to have the courage to disconnect. That's the lesson. To say no, to not gaslight yourself, because that's, okay, when you are on the verge of learning a big lesson, like permanently, when you are on the verge of permanently transforming, every temptation in each chakra, gaslighting, feeling like you can't speak up, feeling shame about yourself and feeling shut down because, you know, if you actually left a relationship, you'd feel alone and then you'd feel unworthy, feeling powerless, having low self-belief, feeling guilty, feeling like you don't deserve to be in this world because you have nothing to offer and you have no worth if it's not connected to a partner or a family. All of those things will come up. Boom, 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 boom. I gaslight myself. I question myself. I let somebody else tell me who I am. That's one of the biggest lessons of the empath. You will attract people. You may attract people that try to tell you who you are. They'll try to paint you in a certain way. They'll try to have a narrative about you. And so instead of getting hijacked emotionally by what those people say, the lesson is like, okay, like I know who I am. I'm not going to buy into a broken image of myself that they're projecting onto me, that I'm buying into. I'm not going to buy into that anymore. If you know, no human being is perfect, and we all have reactivity and we all have like abuser energy. Again, I hate to break it to you, but like we all have abuser energy. I think Richard Rudd said like the more you awaken, the more abusive relationships become. In some cases, because ultimately they can be very, very harmonious, but like spiritual energy activates everything in you that's unhealed so that it can be healed. You have to have like the courage and ability to heal those things, but a person with an abandonment wound might get very volatile when they feel abandoned. So it would be like another lesson of the empath would be like, okay, to sit with the amplitude of your fear and sweat it out, right? It might make you sweat. It might make your heart race. It might make you feel like you're ticking, like a ticking time bomb. Like, that's what it's felt like for me, like ticking, like, oh my God, like, this is so deeply disturbing to me to feel like I have no one or like I have nothing. And I've had to, in layers, like sit with it and sit with it and sit with it and sit with it. And then eventually, poof, it's just gone. Eventually it's just gone. Because now you have you. Now you have the light within you. So in a nutshell, look, you have to narcissist, you have to individuate. You might attract people that try to control you, try to project a narrative onto you. They might try to, there's so many ways that people can try to control you. By silencing you, by ignoring you, you know, with an example of divorce, people that play those games trying to avoid child support and alimony, there's all kinds of ways people can try to control you. And guess what? You have to be uncontrollable. Do not let them control your emotions. Don't let them control your feelings about yourself. As long as you mean well, and that you are devoted to coming back into your heart and you refuse to give in to hatred and you refuse to give in, like, you might have reactive behavior, but you refuse to give in to like hatred, sadism, like you don't want to be part of that. Unseen forces will come to help you. I know this from my experience. So that's why I said in another video, like the best manifestation technique is to complete your karmic contract. Your karmic contract of the unhealed empath requires you to individuate, to not let your environment influence how you feel about yourself, to be able to have healthy male energy and to choose to disconnect, even though that might be the most foreign thing to your psyche, because all you've ever known is to be blended with something. And so part of us thinks like, well, it's better to be part of something than to be alone, right? And so then we have to sit with our fear of abandonment. Like we have to, all of these things that come up in different parts of us, we have to meet with presence. And as you do those things, as you let go of guilt, that is a huge one. And I need to make another video about guilt, but chronic guilt is basically a chronic illness. Like, you could literally stay in a relationship because you feel guilty about leaving. You could stay in a friendship because you feel guilty about leaving that person to their own devices. You know, you might feel guilty because they had a bad childhood, but yet they're a drunk and a drug addict and they use you as a punching bag. So life will show you what you need to do. If it's compassion that you need to develop, then compassion will heal the situation. But if compassion doesn't heal the situation, in other words, you're still in that relationship and that person is still treating you that way, the lesson is to have enough self-worth to get away from them. And then to not let the guilt rope you back in. And to get rid of guilt as a chronic illness, not as an emotion, but as a chronic illness that makes like 90% of your choices for you. The way that you do it is to make a decision, like a hardcore decision, to say, be gone. I am done with you, guilt. It's even more powerful if you use water, if you submerge yourself in water and you tell the water to remove this from you, that you are no longer going to let guilt make choices for you. And guess what? When you get rid of the guilt, you're no longer going to attract people, or you're no longer going to feel even sexually attracted to, physically attracted to, emotionally attracted, intellectually attracted to people that like to blame you for things. I noticed that when I exercised guilt from my energy, I felt a lot less interested in certain people. I felt like my interest in being in their life disappeared because the only thing that bonded me to them was that magnet of guilt and blame. Guilt attracts blame. Guilt attracts blame. It's a pole. It's opposite poles. So I hope this was helpful. I get it. I get unhealthy empathy. I could literally not tell the difference between my knee and my mom's knee, my throat and someone at the freaking grocery store. Even when I started doing healing work, you know, like I would process the person's pain through my body. I would feel their pain to such an extreme degree that it would like almost take me out. And on a soul level, I know my soul wants to understand people on a very deep level, but as I've chosen to not be a martyr, that's another one. As I've chosen to not be a martyr, I can now help people without feeling their pain. I don't need to feel it to that degree. Actually, you don't really, to have empathy for someone, it's not that you need to feel their pain. That's not what empathy is. Empathy is not the feeling, it's not really feeling what other people feel. It's being able to read the soul and let God use you to give that person what they need, which might be tough love, which might be being direct. It's not always soft, ooey gooey empathy that people think that's what empathy is. Empathy is being attuned to the soul and letting God move through you, which is ultimately what that really is compassion. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a beautiful day.